Big Shaq was just out for a quiet walk with his dog, Diesel, his best friend, his protector, his family. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. A blacked-out SUV screeched to a stop. Three masked men jumped out, and before Shaq could even react, bang! One shot rang through the night. Diesel dropped to the ground, gasping for air. The street froze. Onlookers covered their mouths. Even the wind seemed to stop. But Shaq, he didn't scream. He didn't run. He slowly knelt beside Diesel and whispered one word. "I promise." Then he stood up, his 6'7" frame towering like a storm on the rise. And as the shooters laughed and sped off, they had no idea. They didn't just kill a dog. They declared war on a man with a past more dangerous than they could ever imagine. What Shaq did next shook the city, exposed secrets no one was ready for, and left the justice system scrambling to catch up. Stay till the end, because this story isn't about revenge. It's about a legacy no one saw coming. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The night was still until it wasn't. A single gunshot tore through the calm like thunder. Big Shaq jolted upright from his couch, the echo hitting him like a punch to the chest. He didn't hesitate. He sprinted through the marble-floored hallway, shoved the door open, and burst onto his driveway. There, under the silver glow of the moonlight, Diesel, the massive cane Corso he'd raised since a pup, was lying on his side, whimpering, blood pooling beneath him. "No, no, no, no," Shaq muttered, falling to his knees. He cradled Diesel's head in his arms. The dog weakly wagged his tail once before his body went limp. Then he heard the laughter. 5 masked men stood just beyond the gate, silhouetted against the streetlights. One of them twirled a pistol in his hand. Casual, smug. "Dumb mutt got in our way," he said, cocking his head at Diesel's lifeless form. Shaq didn't speak. He didn't move, but his fingers curled around the blood-soaked collar in his hand, knuckles cracking, as his rage built like a volcano waiting to erupt. One of the other gang members chuckled, nudging the shooter. "You think he's gonna cry?" Shaq slowly laid Diesel's head down on the concrete, with a reverence that made even the bravest thug falter for a split second. Then without a word, he stood. And when he stood, he rose like a mountain. All 6'11" of him loomed over the gang like a shadow cast by something ancient and unstoppable. His broad shoulders squared, his eyes locked onto the shooter, and in that instant, the smirks vanished. Even behind the mask, fear flickered. "You have no idea what you just did," Shaq said, his voice low and gravelly, each word carrying the weight of a promise, a dangerous one. The shooter shifted his stance, suddenly less sure of himself. "It was just a dog, man." Shaq took a single step forward, and it was like the air itself tightened. The leader raised the gun again, aiming it straight at Shaq. "Stay back!" Shaq didn't flinch. Instead, he glanced down at Diesel, then back at the group. His jaw clenched. "This wasn't just a dog," he said. "That was family." His fist clenched tighter. Then his voice dropped lower than ever, calm but lethal. "You made your last mistake tonight." The gang didn't wait for Shaq to take another step. "Run!" one of them shouted. But it was already too late. Shaq lunged forward like a freight train unleashed, his massive frame moving with terrifying speed. Gravel cracked under his sneakers as he launched toward the nearest thug, the same one who had pulled the trigger. The man fumbled for his pistol again, but before he could raise it, Shaq was on him. In one fluid motion, Shaq snatched the man's wrist midair, twisted it, and a sickening crack echoed through the night. The gun clattered to the ground as the shooter screamed in agony, dropping to his knees. The others froze for a heartbeat, shocked that the giant had closed the distance so fast. Then they scrambled. "Go, go, go!" another yelled, yanking open the door of a beat-up black sedan parked down the street. Tires screeched as the car peeled off, taillights disappearing into the darkness. Shaq stood there, breathing hard, glaring after them. He didn't chase. Not yet. He turned and dropped to one knee beside Diesel's body again, brushing the dog's fur with one trembling hand. The driveway was quiet now, except for the fading hum of the getaway car and Shaq's steady breathing. His voice came out in a whisper, cracked but full of steel. "I'll make them pay, boy. Every single one." He gently closed Diesel's eyes, then stood up. Calm now, focused. He pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered for a moment, before pressing a number that hadn't been used in years. The line clicked. Then a deep voice answered, low and unmistakably dangerous. Well, well, long time no see, Shaq. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. Shaq didn't waste time. I need you. A pause, the voice chuckled. You only call when someone's about to die. They killed Diesel, Shaq said coldly. Dead silence on the line. Then the voice turned serious. You got a name? Not yet, but I got a face. And I need backup. You still got that black SUV? Shaq looked toward the garage. Gassed up and ready. The voice answered with a growl. Then let's hunt. The engine growled low as Shaq sped down the dark, empty road. The streetlights flashed across his eyes like pulses of rage. Diesel's lifeless body, the smirk on the gunman's face, the way they laughed. It played on repeat inside his head. But there was no time for anger now. This wasn't emotion. This was focus. He pulled up outside an abandoned garage on the outskirts of the city. It looked deserted. Peeling paint, broken signage. But Shaq knew better. This was the kind of place you only found if you already knew it existed. He knocked once, then twice, then once again. A specific rhythm. The steel door creaked open, just enough for a single eye to peek out. Then it swung wide. A man stepped forward, late 50s, lean but powerful, with the posture of someone who'd never really left the battlefield. His hair was graying at the temples, but his eyes? Cold, calculated, razor sharp. Shaquille, he said simply, voice low. Been a while. Too long, Marcus. They clasped hands like brothers. Not the kind that hugged, the kind that buried bodies together. Inside, the room looked nothing like the outside. State-of-the-art tech lined the walls. Surveillance monitors, tactical maps, a weapons bench that looked like a military showroom. Shaq walked in and dropped a bloodied photo of Diesel on the table. They killed my dog, he said quietly. Left him to die on my lawn. Marcus didn't flinch. He stared at the photo, then looked up. You want names? I want blood, Shaq replied. Marcus nodded, already turning to the monitor bank. You remember what we used to say? Shaq smirked. Don't start what you can't finish. A few keystrokes later, surveillance footage popped up. Marcus had contacts everywhere, street cams, drones, even eyes in the underworld. That gang, Marcus said, they weren't freelancing. They were hired by someone with money and history. He clicked another screen. A face appeared, clean cut, suit and tie, but dead behind the eyes. Shaq's smile vanished. Vexler. The name tasted like poison. Years ago, Shaq had testified against him, shut down his entire empire. Everyone thought Vexler had disappeared. He hadn't. Shaq stepped back from the screen, breathing slow. Where is he? Marcus handed over a folder. Inside, a single address. A warehouse on the south side. No markings. Off the grid. Welcome back to the old life, Marcus said. Shaq turned toward the exit, fire in his eyes. I never left it. The SUV's headlights flicked on. Shaq opened the trunk, revealing gear no athlete should ever own. He zipped up his jacket, took one last look at Diesel's photo on his dashboard and muttered, Let's begin. The hunt was officially on. The moonlight barely cut through the thick fog hanging over the abandoned industrial zone. Shaq stood still for a moment, eyes locked on the building ahead. A crumbling warehouse with shattered windows, faded graffiti, and one flickering light above the rusted steel door. He didn't knock. With one swift kick, the door flew open, crashing against the wall with a thunderous echo. The sudden noise startled the 5 men inside. Thugs in hoodies and chains lounging on stained couches, half drunk and laughing like they had nothing to fear. Until now. Well, well, one of them sneered, standing up and puffing his chest. Look who finally showed crack. Shaq's fist met his jaw before he could finish the sentence. The man's body flew back, crashing into a stack of crates. Silence fell like a guillotine. Another gang member scrambled for a pistol tucked into his waistband, but Shaq was faster. He grabbed a wooden chair, flipped it into his hands, and hurled it with pinpoint accuracy. The chair exploded against the man's chest, sending him spiraling onto the floor, wheezing for air. 2 others tried to run. Big mistake. Shaq caught one by the hoodie, yanked him backward, and slammed him into the concrete wall. The last man froze mid-step, hands up, voice trembling. We didn't mean nothing, man. It was just orders. Just orders. Shaq grabbed him by the collar. Whose orders? I don't know his name, I swear, the guy stammered. He pays us. Tells us where to go. That's all we know. Shaq shoved him back and turned toward the far end of the warehouse. Something glinted in the dim light. A corkboard. He walked closer. His heart stopped. Pinned right in the center was a photo. Diesel, tongue out, sitting proudly on Shaq's porch. Except now, red marker scrawled across the bottom read, "Next time Shaq." Shaq stared at it, unmoving. The room felt colder. The rage in his chest, once burning hot, turned into something far more dangerous, controlled, focused. He turned slowly to the trembling thug behind him. "You sure you don't know his name?" The thug swallowed hard. He calls himself V." Shaq's fist clenched. His eyes narrowed. V wasn't just a name. He was a ghost from the past. And if V had Diesel's photo, this was personal. Real personal. And it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. This wasn't random. The gang wanted Shaq's attention. And now, they've got it. The warehouse stank of sweat, gasoline, and fear. The air was thick with tension as three gang members, bruised, bleeding, and terrified, sat slumped against the wall, staring up at the giant who just dismantled their crew like it was nothing. Shaq stood in front of them, breathing steady, eyes locked in. Not a word spoken, just the sound of a light bulb humming overhead and the distant wail of sirens somewhere in the city. He finally spoke, voice low and sharp. "Talk!" One thug winced, clutching his side. "We were just following orders, man." Shaq stepped forward. "From who?" The guy hesitated. Shaq's tone dropped an octave. "You think this is me angry? I'm not even close yet." The youngest of the three cracked. It was a message. Boss said it was time you felt loss, like you made him feel." Shaq narrowed his eyes. "Who's your boss?" Silence. A beat passed. Then the first guy mumbled, "He goes by Vi. That's all we know. He pays us. Sends messages. Coordinates jobs." Shaq crouched down, eye level. "Why Diesel?" The kid trembled. "He said hurting you directly would be too easy. He wanted to take something pure. Something that had cut deep." Shaq's jaw tightened, nostrils flaring. It wasn't just revenge, it was designed to break him. This wasn't some street-level retaliation. This was strategy, precision, personal. He stood, stepping back as the weight of it all settled in. The pieces were falling into place now. Whoever V was, he didn't just want to send a message. He wanted Shaq to snap, to lose focus, to chase shadows. Too bad for him, Shaq didn't break that easily. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He answered without hesitation. A low, mocking voice came through the receiver, slick with venom and confidence. "Having fun, big guy?" Shaq didn't say a word. The voice chuckled. "You're wondering who I am. You're piecing it together. That's good. Makes the game more exciting." Shaq's grip on the phone tightened. "You're going to regret this." "I already do," the voice replied. "Regret not doing it sooner." The call ended. Shaq stared at the screen, then at the photo of Diesel still pinned to the wall. This wasn't over. It hadn't even started yet. War had been declared, and Shaq was ready to finish it. The voice on the phone is someone Shaq never expected to hear. Shaq stared at the phone like it had just spoken in another language. The line was dead, but the voice still echoed in his ears. Smooth, confident, cold. "You don't recognize me, do you?" it had said. Shaq's mind raced. He knew that voice, but it was buried deep, somewhere in the shadows of a past he rarely revisited. Michelle, his attorney-turned-ally, stepped into the warehouse, glancing at the shattered mess left behind. "Shaq? You good?" He didn't answer. He just kept staring ahead. Then, without looking at her, he said, "Get me the files. Everything from the Burke case." Michelle blinked. "Burke? That was over a decade ago. That guy vanished." Shaq turned. He didn't vanish. He waited. Flashback. 12 years earlier. A younger Shaq, suited up, sat across from a round, silver-haired businessman in a glass office high above the city. This was Victor Burke, billionaire investor, media mogul, and, as Shaq had discovered, a man laundering money through charities and selling city contracts under the table. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away, Mr. O'Neill," Burke had said then, sipping scotch like it was just another Wednesday. Shaq stood. "I don't walk away from corruption." He leaked the evidence to the feds the next day. Burke lost everything, his companies, his fortune, his reputation. But he didn't go to prison. He disappeared. Until now. Back in the present, Michelle's voice cut through the silence. "You think Burke's behind this?" Shaq nodded slowly. "Only someone with power, money, and a personal vendetta would go this far." He didn't just want to hurt me. He wanted me to feel it. Michelle crossed her arms. And Diesel was the first strike. Shaq clenched his fists, eyes burning. He took my piece. Now I take everything else. His phone buzzed again. A text this time. A photo of Shaq's old neighborhood. The playground where he grew up. The message beneath it read, "Round 2 starts where you began." Shaq's entire expression shifted. No more confusion. No more hesitation. Just fire. "I hope you're ready," he muttered, mostly to himself, "because I'm coming for you next." Michelle stepped closer. "Shaq, this is war now. You sure you want to do this?" Shaq looked at her, eyes like steel. "I'm not just doing it for Diesel. I'm doing it for every innocent person he's going to hurt next if I don't stop him." Outside, the roar of an engine echoed. A drone hovered near the window, recording, watching. Shaq stepped into view and glared up at it. "You watching, Burke?" he growled. "Good. Watch what happens next." Shaq knows where to find him. But what he doesn't know? He's walking into a trap. The storm outside had started to break, lightning flashing across the sky like warning signs. Signs Shaq ignored. His SUV coasted to a stop in front of a rusted metal door, hidden behind a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of the city. No signs, no people, just an address whispered to him by someone who owed him a favor. An underground casino, known only to criminals, fixers, and the worst kind of men. The kind who don't play by the law, but live by power. Shaq stepped out, eyes scanning the shadows. Every instinct screamed this was a setup, but instincts could wait. This was the only lead that brought him closer to Burke. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and tension. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The sound of slot machines buzzed faintly in the distance, and a low thump of bass rumbled under his feet. He walked slowly, each step echoing like a warning bell. Dealers paused mid-deal. Guards glanced over shoulders. Everyone recognized the giant in the room, but no one dared move. Shaq's eyes locked on a narrow hallway near the back. A steel door sat slightly ajar. He pushed it open. It led to a dark corridor. Too quiet, too clean. He stepped inside. Clank. The sound was subtle. A mechanical click echoed above. Then slam! The door behind him shut with brutal force. A loud metallic groan locked it in place. Red lights flared to life overhead, casting the hallway in an eerie, pulsing glow. Shaq spun, bracing himself. Then came the voice. Smooth, mocking. "Welcome, Shaq." Speakers embedded in the ceiling crackled as the voice laughed. "Glad you could join us. You've been busy, smashing my boys, wrecking my warehouse. But see, now, it's my turn." Hidden panels on the side walls slid open with a hiss. 5 heavily armed guards stepped out, assault rifles raised, faces hidden behind black tactical masks. Shaq didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed, scanning their movements, measuring the space, calculating. "You set this up just for me?" he called out, voice calm. "Oh, I did more than that," the voice replied. "I made it a game. Let's see how long you last." One of the guards raises his weapon. Shaq doesn't move. Not yet, but his fingers curl into fists. He's outnumbered, trapped, and yet he smiles. "Let's play." Shaq is surrounded. 5 men move in. Time to remind them who he is. For a split second, silence ruled the room. Then, chaos. The first guard lunged at Shaq like a battering ram, his fists flying wild. Shaq dipped to the left, letting the punch fly past his shoulder. His reply? A thunderous uppercut that lifted the man off the ground. He collapsed instantly, unconscious before he hit the floor. The second came in faster, smoother, military-trained. He swung a baton toward Shaq's ribs. Shaq blocked it with his forearm, grunted, then grabbed the man's vest and yanked him forward, straight into a knee that cracked like thunder against his chest. The man gasped, folded, and dropped. 2 down. The third attacker was smarter. He waited for an opening, then lunged with a blade glinting in the red lights. Shaq sidestepped, caught the wrist midair, and twisted hard. The sickening pop of bone dislocation echoed as the knife clattered to the ground. Before the man could scream, Shaq slammed him against the wall with enough force to knock the air from his lungs. 3 down. From behind, the fourth man tackled Shaq around the waist. But it was like hitting a wall. Shaq didn't even stumble. Instead, he reached behind, grabbed the man by the collar, and flung him over his shoulder. The guard crashed through a poker table, splinters flying everywhere. 4 down. The last guard paused. His hand went to his holster. Shaq's eyes locked on him. Calm, unblinking, dangerous. The guard hesitated, then yanked the pistol free, but he was too slow. Shaq surged forward like a freight train. Before the gun even aimed, his massive hand clamped over the barrel. And then, metal groaned. Right in front of everyone, Shaq bent the steel weapon in half like it was made of plastic. The trigger snapped. The chamber twisted. He dropped the ruined gun at the guard's feet. "Wrong move," Shaq said, voice low, cold, final. The guard froze in place, stunned into silence. Breathing hard but steady, Shaq looked around. Broken furniture, groaning bodies, shattered lights. The speaker crackled overhead again. "Well, that was entertaining," the voice said. "But I'm just getting started." A hidden door slides open on the far wall. A spotlight flares to life. And from the shadows, someone steps out. Not a guard, not a thug, but the man, himself, Burke. And he's smiling. Shaq finds the real enemy, the man who ordered Diesel's death. The door creaked shut behind Shaq as he stepped into the VIP lounge. It was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Velvet drapes, polished floors, and gold chandeliers overhead gave the illusion of elegance, but the stench of corruption clung to the air like smoke. At the far end of the room, a man stood sipping from a crystal glass. His back was turned, but his reflection shimmered in the glass-paneled wall. A thin, sharp-jawed figure in a tailored navy suit. His hair was slicked back, salt and pepper, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. He turned slowly. "Shaquille O'Neal," he said, raising his glass. "I must say, you made quite an entrance." Shaq didn't flinch. His eyes locked on the man with a fire that could melt steel. "You the one they call Burke?" Burke chuckled, taking a slow sip. "I've been called worse." Shaq stepped closer, fists clenched. "You killed Diesel." Burke raised an eyebrow. "Technically, I didn't pull the trigger. But yes, I gave the order. That mutt was just the first message." Shaq's jaw tightened, his body coiled with rage. "Big mistake." Burke smiled wider. "You're impressive, Shaq. Strong, resilient, but you're out of your league." Shaq moved in a flash, slamming both fists down on the glass table between them. It shattered instantly, sending shards flying. Burke didn't even flinch. "I'm not here to play games," Shaq growled. Burke casually brushed a sliver of glass from his lapel. "Neither am I." He snapped his fingers. The double doors behind Shaq burst open. Half a dozen armed men entered, each dressed in black tactical gear, rifles aimed. Red laser sights crisscrossed Shaq's chest. Burke stepped back, still calm. "You've made quite the mess. Beat up my men, tore through my business. And now, you're cornered." Shaq stood tall, eyes sweeping the room, mind calculating. No fear, no panic, just the quiet fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" Shaq said, voice steady. "You hide behind guns and bodyguards." Burke tilted his head. "And you?" Shaq cracked his neck. "I am the weapon." One of the guards moved, just an inch. It was enough. Shaq lunged, grabbing the nearest man by the vest and yanking him forward like a shield. The room erupted. Guns cocked, men shouted, chaos brewed. But just as the first shot was about to ring out, another sound stopped everyone. A loud click. From the corner, a second door opened, and in walked someone no one expected. Michelle, Shaq's lawyer. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a small squad in SWAT gear, badges shining, weapons drawn. Michelle smirked. "Thought you might need some backup." Outnumbered, trapped, but Shaq never backs down. Burke's voice dripped with venom as he stepped toward Shaq, flanked by his armed guards. The glint of steel from the rifles reflected the coldness in the room. Every red laser sight on Shaq's chest pulsed like a countdown, but Shaq didn't blink. "I could shoot you right now," Burke hissed, raising a silver-plated pistol. His hand was steady, but his eyes twitched with anticipation. Shaq tilted his head and smiled. Slow, deliberate, fearless. "Go ahead," he said, voice low. "But you better make it count." For a moment, silence reigned. The guards looked at each other, unsure whether to move or wait for Burke's signal. And then, boom! The back doors exploded open with a force that rattled the chandeliers overhead. Smoke billowed into the room as tactical boots stomped in. Burke spun around, stunned. "What the—" Shaq's backup had arrived. Leading the charge was Michelle, clad in black tactical gear, her eyes locked on Shaq. Behind her, members of a private special ops team, the same team Shaq had once trained with during his security days. Helmets, shields, assault rifles, all pointed directly at Burke's men. Shaq exhaled, cracking his knuckles. "Took you long enough," Michelle smirked. "Traffic." Burke's face drained of color. His gun wavered in his hand. This is impossible." Shaq stepped forward, calm as ever. "Nah, you just underestimated the wrong man." Chaos erupted. Burke's guards swung their rifles toward the door, but Shaq moved first. In one fluid motion, he elbowed the closest thug, spun him around, and sent him flying into two others. Michelle's team opened fire, but with precision. Rubber bullets, flashbangs, tasers, controlled force. They weren't here to kill. They were here to end it clean. Burke tried to slip away, ducking behind a sofa, crawling toward a hidden hallway. But Michelle spotted him. "Going somewhere?" She leveled her weapon. "Hands, now!" Burke hesitated, then dropped the pistol. Shaq stepped over the chaos, his massive figure towering as he stood face to face with the man who ordered Diesel's death. "This is for Diesel," he growled, and with a single, earth-shaking punch, Burke collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The room went still. As guards cuffed Burke and dragged him away, Michelle turned to Shaq. "It's over!" But Shaq's eyes narrowed toward a laptop still open on Burke's desk. The screen flashed a single message. "Phase 2 activated." Shaq clenched his fists. "It's not over," he said. "Not even close." The final showdown begins. Burke's body hit the floor hard, but even unconscious, he wasn't done. As Michelle's team began sweeping the casino floor, collecting weapons and securing the remaining guards, Shaq noticed something. The moment Burke went down, one of the half-shattered walls near the VIP bar began to shift. A hidden panel. A door. Shaq moved fast. With a single kick, he blasted it open, and sure enough, a tunnel stretched out behind it. Dirt walls, low ceiling, an escape route. "Burke's on the move!" one of the guards shouted, but Shaq was already sprinting. Down the tunnel, Burke was limping away, his lip bleeding, suit torn, but still clutching a small device in his hand. The final act of a desperate man. Shaq's voice thundered through the corridor. "You think you're walking away from this?" Burke turned, eyes wild. "You don't understand what you started. I was the balance. Without me, chaos!" Shaq didn't wait. He slammed Burke against the concrete wall, sending the device clattering to the ground. "No more speeches," Shaq growled. Burke swung a punch. Shaq ducked, countered with a heavy body blow that knocked the wind out of him. Burke coughed, blood spraying the wall. But the man didn't stop. He lunged again, this time grabbing a rusted pipe from the ground and swinging it wildly. Shaq caught it midair, twisted, ripped it from Burke's hands and tossed it aside like a twig. And then, one last strike. A fist like a wrecking ball landed square on Burke's jaw, sending him crashing into the dirt. The fight was over. "This is for Diesel," Shaq said, breath steady but heavy. He stood over the broken man, eyes full of fire, pain, and something colder. Justice. Michelle appeared moments later with two guards, who quickly handcuffed Burke, now barely conscious. As they dragged him back up the tunnel toward the surface, Burke opened his eyes and looked back at Shaq. His lips curled into a weak smirk. "You think you won?" he rasped. "You stopped me, but you can't stop what I started." Shaq narrowed his eyes. "Try me." Burke leaned in just before disappearing into the light and whispered, "There's more coming, O'Neill. You just opened the wrong door." Shaq stood in the shadows, fists clenched again. The war wasn't over. It had just changed. The city is buzzing. Shaq just took down one of the most dangerous criminals. The sirens wailed in the distance, flashing red and blue lights painting the casino walls as cruisers pulled up one after another. Reporters swarmed the perimeter, shouting questions that bounced off the chaos like bullets off armor. But inside, silence. Shaq stepped through the wreckage. Broken tables, knocked out guards, shattered chandeliers. Behind him, Michelle and her team gave statements to law enforcement, but Shaq wasn't interested in news headlines or press conferences. He had one stop to make. An hour later, the city skyline faded behind him. Shaq pulled into a quiet hillside, a place untouched by violence, noise, or revenge. He stepped out of his SUV, his massive frame still bruised from battle but standing tall. In his hand, he held a single flower, white, clean, pure. He approached a small headstone beneath an oak tree. Diesel, loyal to the end. Protector, friend. Shaq knelt down. His fingers brushed the cool surface of the stone. The wind rustled through the leaves, almost like a whisper. You were more than a dog, Shaq said softly. You were family. They thought they could take you and get away with it. He placed the flower gently at the base of the grave. His jaw tightened, but a tear escaped down his cheek. They were wrong. In the distance, faint chatter from a small portable radio broke the quiet. Michelle's voice echoed from a news report. Sources confirm that billionaire crime lord Vincent Burke was taken into custody tonight after a violent standoff. Authorities are crediting former NBA icon Shaquille O'Neal with preventing what could have been a major underground war. Shaq rose slowly, the sunlight catching his cross necklace as it swung gently over his chest. He looked out across the city below, a storm of emotions in his eyes. Grief, peace, and something burning deeper. Purpose. He turned back to his SUV, slid into the driver's seat, and fired up the engine. As the tires crunched over gravel and the city came back into view, his phone buzzed on the dashboard. Unknown number, one word in the text. Ready? Shaq stared at it. His grip tightened on the wheel. The screen fades to black. One last message appears. They thought it ended with Diesel. It was only the beginning.